Okay, go ahead.
So my topic was 1.5 sources of power and authority, and I just want to point out that I made these slides, and I had about as much energy as I do right now, so they might not be
2 a.m. slides.
So the big question with sources of power and authority is, how do political systems gain and maintain their authority? So speaking of power and authority, I feel the need to remind you that power is the ability to control and direct others, and authority is the right to control others and the right to exercise your power. So an example would be Boko Haram. It's a terrorist group in northern Nigeria, and they have power because they cause a lot of damage and do a lot of harm to people in northern Nigeria, but they don't have authority because of the legal institutions in Nigeria and because not everybody really listens to them, especially people in southern Nigeria. So what are the sources of power and authority? So one can be in Constitution, and this is not an extensive list. There are others. These are just the 6 that were in the video. So a Constitution, which, for example, is what Mexico has, which is what the picture is. It outlines the powers of a government, which is important. I don't really know how else to explain that.
Yes.
So another one is religion, because religion can also outline the powers of a leader or a government and emphasize values for a government.
Hashtag theocracy in Iran.
Yeah, so that would be Iran. Military, which was Nigeria before 1999. So the military can be used to enforce laws and punish dissent. A political party, like in China or Russia, kind of, is when all the members of the party have authority. I don't really like how I worded that. It's more so about a party than the members. It's more so about the party having power than it is the members. The legislature, so that's parliament in the United Kingdom. So legislatures make the laws that are to be followed, and support of a government, so this is again Mexico, is like the consent to be governed, because like you can have all of the other 5, but if nobody's listening to the government in the first place, then like what's the point? So now I'm just going to go through the sources for all of the 6 countries. So this is going to be a little bit boring, but it is kind of important that you understand all of them. So the first one for the United Kingdom is constitutional reforms. So the United Kingdom passed these constitutional reforms, and it separated the power from the federal government and gave it to local governments, which is what helps maintain the power, like it helps outline the power of both the local and federal governments. The next one is the House of Commons, which is the legislature, and it makes laws. And then that's important because it like outlines laws. So the prime minister enforces laws and is the leader of the government. So it's prime minister is basically their president. So the prime minister doesn't have a whole lot of power to like change stuff, but he can, or I guess she, for 47 days, whoever the prime minister is can also like emphasize stuff, and their values kind of affect the country's perspective of things. And then the big thing you have to be able to do when it comes to the sources of power is be able to make an interpretation about them, which you'll see me put at the bottom of the slides. And I don't really know how to explain that, or what I just did. So the interpretation about the United Kingdom's sources of power is that they're all focused on separating powers, which is a value of the United Kingdom's government as a whole. So now we're getting to Russia. So the political elites are a group that gives the government authority / power. So certain individuals' support of Putin is enough to give him power, even though there are people in the country that don't like him. And the elections are another thing. It's the same thing with elections here, and that the result of elections helps certify the to-be leader's power. Except in Russia, the elections favor one party and they're not fair, so that supports Putin's power. And as I just said, the interpretation of all of these is a focus on keeping Vladimir Putin in power, and letting his like elites and his favorite people keep holding power too. China. So the Chinese Communist Party, or the CCP, is the only group with political power in China, and the military is controlled by the CCP to enforce policy and punish dissent. The CCP came from the 1949 revolution, which ended Mao Zedong's rule and set up the People's Republic of China, which is just the country that it is. and that's when the CCP took power. In economics, like the economics of China gave the CCP more power. So when the country performs better, the CCP has more power. So the biggest thing, and the authoritarian regime, which comes from the CCP being the only party with political power. So the biggest thing here is that China's sources of power and authority are focused on maintaining the CCP's authority and not.
There was a creeper.
Oh. Hello?
Creepers.
Okay. So now we're on to Mexico. So I feel like Mexico and Nigeria are like, you can't even talk about them during our lesson things. Yeah, I don't know. Man, I don't know.
Okay.
So I feel like you always talk about how Mexico and Nigeria are transitioning, and that remains true because Mexico is transitioning from not military rule but single party rule to democracy. And on that note, they're a multi-party republic, which means that multiple groups can run for office and win. Like in Russia, multiple people can run for office, but they're not going to win because the elections are rigged.
Free and
There's
fair
multiple
elections.
groups and the elections are fair. And on that note, the 2000 election was the first election where multiple parties ran for office for the first time in a free and fair election. And then electoral reforms made those elections more fair. And Mexico has a federal system, which also affects its government. So the biggest focus is on avoiding a regression to one-party rule. So it's kind of similar to the United Kingdom where they're focusing on separating powers, but they're not really to that point yet because they're still transitioning away. And as Dina mentioned, it's kind of a spectrum. You have to get past the point. You have to get past the point where you're scared of regressing to one-party rule to focus. You have to get past the halfway point between single party rule on the way to democracy before you can stop worrying about single party rule. Nigeria, this is going to be basically the same thing as Mexico, where they have a transition, but this is a movement away from military rule. They had a constitution in 1999 which outlined their modern republican government and took power away from the military. And around that time there was a peaceful transfer instead of violence that came with the coup from the military usurping the power. And again, like Mexico, they have a federal system. And the interpretation here is just like Mexico, is avoiding military rule by preventing coups and limiting executive power. And again, this is like the spectrum where there's that halfway point where right now they're focusing on avoiding military rule before they're focused on preserving democracy. Finally, I think, is Iran. This is the one where there's the most to it. And the least I know about it. So the transition is different than Mexico and Nigeria, where they're moving from authoritarian to democracy, where they're moving from authoritarian to authoritarian, basically.
Yeah.
So the 1979 revolution and constitution overthrew the last Shah or dictator and outlined the theocratic government of today. And now, on the note of theocracy, the country employs Sharia law to govern the country. So the guardianship of the jurist is the religiously appointed figure that leads Iran, and the powers of the guardian are found in the Quran. And Iran, as I mentioned, has an authoritarian regime, which gives the jurist power and maintains their authoritarian rule. And finally, the military enforces policy and punishes dissent. Interpretation is the focus on Islam being the government priority. Now I have MCQs. So all of the following are true about the United Kingdom's political system except A, it's a single-party socialist republic, B, it's a constitutional monarchy, C, it has a parliamentary system, and D, it has a very strong tradition of democracy.
I know A.
Yeah. So B is true, C is true, and D is true.
Can we take a field trip to UK?
Yeah.
I think we should. We can blow
We
by
could
it.
go for the Europe trip this spring.
I went last year. I'm not going again. Sorry, guys.
I couldn't go because I don't have the money to pay for it.
It's cold in here now.
But yeah. Oh, I meant
It's
cold.
July. It's July.
So the answer is
How
from
can
C.
you see that?
So which of the following is an
It's worse.
example of a consensus democracy? So it's China, Russia, Switzerland, and Iran. This one is a no-brainer. It's C. It's Switzerland. And this one might throw you for a loop on the AP test because Switzerland isn't a course country, but this is a process of elimination question.
Yeah.
Because in China, the CCP has power. In Russia, Putin has power. In D, the guardianship of the jurist person has power. But in Switzerland's the only one where there isn't necessarily an authoritarian regime.
There are neutral.
Are they gonna
things.
do? Are they gonna do that in other questions too? Or are they just gonna throw in random countries?
Probably.
I think so. I think it's very important though that like in any of the FRQs, like you cannot write about the U.S. even as like a basis point.
I don't know what the United States is.
Oh, got it. Perfect.
Do you know
UK
that
baddie.
place? I don't
UK
know that.
baddie.
I'm just a
Where's your Chad
Part.
makeup?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Which of the following
Talking
is
about
an
the UK and
example
Chad makeup.
of a theocracy? The answer is Iran. D.
Oh, you actually didn't answer that one. Thanks.
I actually can't see.
Actually,
wait, I
got
Well, this
it.
one is
Got
easy.
it, got
It's
it,
either
got it.
Nigeria, Iran, China, or Mexico.
It's
I mean,
only
which
Iran.
one do you think it is? Like
It's
this one is so
I got it.
easy.
Don't play. I got it.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
So,
All right.
Comparing the role of the military in Nigeria to that in Iran, what is a notable difference in the political system?
oh,
Okay.
Ooh.
So, China's military is for ceremonial use, and Nigeria's
Wait,
engages
is
in
it D?
governance. A is not true
Oh my God.
because China uses its military, and Nigeria's is not allowed to be in the government anymore after the new constitution. China's military is apolitical. Nigeria's is the ruling party. Neither is currently true. China's military has always been a part of the government. Well, not always, since 1949. And Nigeria's was the ruling party, but is not, and that's what it says in the question.
Ow.
Or this is what it says in that answer. Nigeria has a standing army, has no standing army. China's military controls the government. Nigeria has a standing army. Like everywhere has a standing army. It's just how the world works. And then
yeah. Hell yeah.
D, Nigeria's military is under civilian control. China's plays a political role. That's true, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. It could be C and it could be D. I don't think it's C
Oh, it's
though.
D. It makes sense.
Yay.
Okay. How does the concept of political participation vary between authoritarian regimes like Russia and democracies like Nigeria? B. Russia has A says that Russia has multiple political parties, which is not true, and Nigeria has a single political party, which is also not true. B says that Nigeria has competitive elections, which is true, and Russia limits
It was like,
political opposition, which is true.
I don't know how you see that from there, bro. I can't even see with glasses.
Nigeria's leaders are approved by a monarch. That's not true. And Russia's are elected.
What?
Nigeria has no monarch. That's the thing you need to take away from that. And then D,
Okay.
Russia encourages civil society. Not true. And Nigeria suppresses public dissent. Neither is really true. I mean, Nigeria's not perfect, so I bet there's a little bit of like.
Guys, I figured out what civil society is.
What?
Is it?
It's basically like INGA. Oh, you neither of you INGA. It's like the interest groups and the linkage institutions. It's like
Oh,
the
okay.
formal and informal organizations that are not a part of the state apparatus, but operate in public. So they're the space outside government and business sectors where individuals come together to voluntarily pursue common interests. So like linkage institutions, political parties, things like that.
Cool.
Oh yeah.
Interest groups.
Interest groups.
So I
NRA.
guess the biggest thing here is that a true answer on a question that says Russia has elections, even though they have elections, will have to mention something about how they're not fair.
So if there's ever a question, just say, and it doesn't say anything about fairness or
Well, read the rest of the question, but if
Yeah.
it just says that Russia has elections,
No.
That's kind of like the big asterisk, so they're probably not the right answer. That's the biggest red flag for an
It's one of
answer.
the big factors that discriminate between democratic
Yeah.
and authoritarian.
Like, okay, the biggest
It's
one,
free and fair.
the biggest one for Russia is going to be that something about their elections, because yes, they have elections, but no, they're not free and fair. The biggest one for Nigeria is going to be like Nigeria is a military rule. It's not. The same thing with Mexico. Mexico is a single party rule. It was, but it's not. Iran is going to be something about a dictator, which is true, but it's not currently true, and it's probably not what they want you to answer. And then the thing about China is probably going to be something about the military, which isn't true because of the CCP.
We should do something about like current events. We should educate ourselves on.
I was gonna
current
say
events.
we should not just do that. We should make like a chart of the comparisons between.
Yeah, I have one made,
Really?
like one that we found, but it's just not. It's
Hmm.
okay. All right.
Okay. Okay. This is the last medium one, I think. How did the source of political legitimacy in the United Kingdom change from the 18th to the 20th century? So A says from direct democracy to constitutional monarchy. So the United Kingdom is a constitutional monarchy today,
Mhm.
but they were not a direct democracy, so A is not right.
Yeah.
B, from monarchy to parliamentary democracy is the right answer.
Yeah.
C, from military
Junta.
to parliamentary democracy. Again, they are parliamentary democracy, but they were not a military junta. And D,
even
from
is
single
that?
party state to federal republic. Again, they are technically a federal republic now, but they were not a single party state. So again, the correct answer is B. Alright, this one's hard. So, supporters of separation of powers would most likely agree with which of the following arguments? A, legislative and executive powers should be combined for streamlined decision making. Yeah, that's not it. So we're gonna go to the next one. B, judicial power is unnecessary in a well-functioning political system. No.
Quite.
C says concentrating power in a single branch is the most effective form of government.
I think
Okay,
it's
so we already know the
pass.
answer is D.
Yay!
But it says dividing government into branches ensures a system of checks and balances. That's true.
I actually think that question was the easiest one. In my opinion. That
Well,
was
because we need to learn more background of like the countries
Yeah.
as a whole.
Yeah.
Okay. A, supporters of authoritarianism would most likely agree with which of the following
Can we
arguments?
give TED Talks?
A, individual rights and freedoms must be protected at all costs. This is a supporter of authoritarianism. This is another one that might be hard because like you see it and you're like, oh, that one's right,
No.
but that one's right in terms of like
Silly.
At all
morally.
costs is a little
but-
bit throw off.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
but either way, this is
No.
talking about authoritarianism, so A's not right.
Read the question.
B, a single leader. Okay, harder said than done. Easier said than done. When it comes to free
Harder said
talk
than
tests. Oh, okay. Spoiler alert. The answer is B.
Spoiler.
B, a single leader or small group should hold power for efficient governance.
Yes, I talk about that in my
Yes,
guys.
that's literally authoritarianism, and I'm not even gonna go through C and D because they're probably stupid answers.
They are.
Yay.
Okay.
So one of them is
Which-
transparency and accountability is overrated.
Oh, I think that's why I said that was the wrong answer. Was because they said the word overrated in the answer. Like,
You said overrated.
like okay, if you and this is another thing. If you see a stupid word in an answer, 99 times out of 100, that's not going to be the answer. Like, do you remember the one last week or 2 weeks ago about like star signs? Like, obviously that's not an answer.
College board will
College
not
is
do
going
that.
crazy.
Yeah,
The tweak.
that one's a throwaway.
If I write
Okay.
about that on my efforts.
And also, if you see a question that says which country, you should automatically be getting these right because it doesn't matter what follows it. These should all be easy. 'Cause
Know
it's
your
literally-
countries.
It is literally what the course is.
No,
Your countries. We'll do more.
Yeah.
We'll do individual TED
should do
Talks.
We'll probably
on
do a
each
lot about
country.
that closer to the test.
Yeah.
Kind of like Deanna's timeline for A-Push.
Yes. Oh my God, my timeline is so good.
Okay, locked in. Which country operates under a federal system with a history of shifting power from monarchy to elected government? United Kingdom. Like that's not even a question.
Monarchy.
Like the only other.
I don't know
Word.
If you
why.
put Mexico
I
in
don't
there, that
know
would be
why
the
this is a
only
hard
thing.
question.
Mexico was
but-
never a monarchy.
Yeah.
No, that would be the only thing that would trip me up.
Oh,
Okay, well
why?
that would
Like,
be
it's
trip me and
obviously
Deanna
not
up.
any of them.
Brooke, I think you were out of it.
Okay, so when you think of
I am
kings and
not.
queens, what do you think of? United Kingdom. You shouldn't even have to read
Princess
the other
Diana?
answers.
Princess Diana, my
Bad
bad.